What's up, Rebel Nation? It's Cam Wicker from the Rebel Walk, co-host of the podcast that you're tuned into right now, the Rebel Talk. In this week's episode, Zach and I will be breaking down the recent news in Ole Miss sports that includes men's and women's basketball and how their season ended in the Sweet 16 this past weekend. We'll also be breaking down the men's and women's transfer portal news for basketball on that side of the episode. Going into the baseball side of the episode, we'll be previewing the series to come against Kentucky while also recapping the previous series against Florida this past weekend. This podcast will be broken down into 3 sections, allowing you to skip through and watch whatever section you'd like or watch the whole thing through. Make sure to leave a like and comment on the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And with that being said, enjoy the show. Welcome back, Rebel fans. You're listening to another episode of the Rebel Talk presented by the Rebel Walk. I'm Cam Wicker, and as always, I'm here with Zach Moreth. And today we're here to talk about a little bit of the recent news in Ole Miss sports. Got the ticker across the bottom of the screen there. If you miss anything throughout the episode, kind of just the basic news on the bottom of the screen right there in front of you guys. But an interesting so far, just a couple of hours for Ole Miss sports, especially on the basketball side. Things are starting to pick up into the season, Zach. Transfer portal starting to pick up a little bit more. You got players that were in the tournament that are entering the portal now, and big name teams like Ole Miss, other teams that are out of the portal now and getting rid of some of their roster spots. We're starting to pick up some traction in the portal news. We'll get into baseball a little bit later in the episode. And I mentioned football down there in the ticker. We won't talk too much about football today, but spring practice is rolling. Pro day was just this past week. Pretty good pro day. Not a lot of media attention there with everyone out for basketball, but guys pretty much shined throughout that pro day. Jackson Dart impressed a lot of scouts at that pro day. Caden Priestcorn didn't get to go to a combine, and he looked pretty good in that pro day as well. Won't talk too much about that, but yeah, football practice is still going on. And then Meet the Rebels will be later this year. Later this month in April. That hasn't been done in a couple of years at Ole Miss, at least in the Lane Kiffin era. COVID kind of put that out the door, and then NIL picked up. Haven't done the Meet the Rebel thing in a while, but they'll be doing that on April 12th to kind of just cap off the spring ball there. I'm not sure if there'll be any type of those games like they did last year. We'll have to see if they decide on that. But as of right now, just the Meet the Rebels. But hopping into a little bit of basketball news, Zach, on the women's side of things, 3 commits today for the women's side of things, and just your overall thoughts on just the way this has started in the transfer portal for Ole Miss and Team 51, I guess we say now instead of Team 50.
Yeah, people complain, as do I, about the transfer portal starting basically during March Madness. But at the same time, Coach Yo and Beard can use the momentum and the energy that they have saved up for March and take it directly to the portal after they've lost or gotten eliminated from the tournaments. And I think you're seeing a result of that relatively quickly, for Coach Yo, Caitlin Peterson from UCF, Jayla Murray from Wichita State, Latasha Lattimore from Virginia. 3 commits in one day. I mean, what the hell are we talking about here, Cam? So really good, start to the portal for Coach Yo. We'll get to the men's side here in a little bit, but Peterson's a girl who scores over 20 points per game, an absolute bucket getter. Jayla Murray also is a very good shooter. It sounds weird going from
Jalen Murray to Jayla.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe, Juju Murray part 2, I guess. She's also a very solid rebounder. And then Latasha Lattimore, she kind of did it all over in the ACC. 11 double-doubles, averaging 8 rebounds per game. This is good. It's a good sign for everyone involved with the women's program because, again, we'll get there, but similar to men's, they were losing just such a sheer volume of players that are important to the program, whether it be Maddie Scott, the list goes on and on. Cam will get into some of the transfers as well, who are transferring out of Ole Miss. Nothing too crazy. But the point being is there's roster spots and roster depth to be filled. So a really nice start for Coach Yo on the women's side of things here, Cam.
Absolutely. And Zach mentioned those players transferring out of Ole Miss women's basketball program. And it's a crazy number. It's 7 players transferring out for Ole Miss. And if you look at it from the outside, you may be like, oh, wow, what happened there? Did something go wrong? Did something go wrong at the end of that run in the playoffs? But no, that's not the case here. This is players really, if you're looking at the list of players that went out, not many of those players played a ton of minutes for this team last year in the past season. So kind of just freeing up some roster spots there. And it was probably some hard discussions that at the end of the season that Coach Joe had with some of these players, like, hey, maybe you're not going to play next year. Maybe if you want to sit here and play in a role position or get your role minutes here, yeah, do that. But if you want to go be great somewhere else, go be great somewhere else. And that's probably what Coach Yo had in discussions with some of those girls on the team. Right off the top of my head, Alosia Correa, Rima Collins, those are two players just right there that I think if you're Coach Yo, you really didn't want to lose. A lot of potential between those two, especially Rima Collins in the minutes that she got and just kind of some of those early non-conference games. She had some pretty solid minutes for Coach Joe in those games, and it seemed like she was going to develop in this program. She was the only player from the Bahamas on this team as well, relating to Coach Joe as well on that. But it seemed like Halosia Correa was going to be kind of next up on that wing spot, kind of that Kendi Ty Williams role for Ole Miss, but she transferred out as well. And then Mariah Noel, she was also a great ball handler. I don't know if you guys watched throughout the season, but she was a great ball handler for this team throughout the season in just games where we had either players in foul trouble or you just needed more minutes off the bench. Mariah Noel was always that 8th or 9th player off the bench for Ole Miss. They won't have that next year. As far as right now, those players can also withdraw from the portal and come back to the program. And we'll have to see who all Coach Yo gets from this portal class. Like Zach said, already 3 in one day. And then adding one from high school as well. And that'll be Lauren Jacobs. She was top 100 recruit in the ESPN classes coming up year. A great shooter from what I know in the film that I've seen from her. She was a Gatorade Player of the Year nominee last year. This year, she was a McDonald's All-American Game nominee. She didn't get into that, but being a nominee for that's still a big deal. You still got to be a really good player to get nominated for one of those things. But yeah, that's going to be another guard heavy rotation next year. If you're Lauren Jacobs, you got Caitlin Peterson coming in at 5'9", and Sierra Chinu. I mean, she's combo guard. Telling what position, what role she's going to be in for this team next year. But it's going to be a very exciting offseason for Ole Miss women's basketball. Just building off of these 3 that you got today, because I mean, starting off today, that's insane. Three high-profile prospects today as well. I mean, Lattimore and Caitlin Peterson speak for themselves, but not many people know much about Jayla Murray. She's 6 foot forward from Wichita State, 12 points, 5 boards a game last season, second all-conference, led the conference in field goal percentage. She had 20 times in double figures. And Coach Yo said today on social media when I was looking through, she called Jayla Murray a dog. Like this is somebody that I see as a dog on the floor. And watching some of the highlights throughout the day, just of these players, Jayla Murray really stood out to me. She's got an aggressive play style. I think it's going to really fit in to this Coach Yo mentality coming into the next season, Zach.
Yeah, and that's one of the most important things when I think you evaluate these players, right? It's very easy to get someone in this day of age where maybe, their heart's not fully in it. Maybe they take it for the money, whatever the case may be. But Jayla Murray looks like a player who's going to really come in here and make a difference from day one. And then you pair that, with the freshmen, the returners as well. I think the transfer portal continues to show us that you can have these year turnarounds and potentially be even better. Before the season, it was, Team 50, such an experienced team. What are they going to do when they lose all this talent? And here we are. We're getting 3 commits in one day. So shout out to Coach Yo. The sky's the limit. We're going to continue to get more commits. Hopefully, I'd love another 3 commit day. I mean, how sick would that be? Probably a little unlikely, but definitely some more over the upcoming weeks here. So a lot to look forward to on the women's side of things, no doubt.
Yeah, obviously the women's side ended their season in Spokane this past weekend, losing to UCLA 76-62. Wasn't the best of endings there at the end of the game. Seems like in that second half, UCLA kind of ran away with it. Lauren Betts was pretty much steady throughout the entire game. I think she had like 15 in the first half, 5 boards, 16 in the second half with 5 boards. Pretty steady for her throughout the game. I know talking with Evie after that game, she said that Lauren Betts was just a physical presence out there. It seemed like at times that maybe she was fouling people, but as a ref, what can you do when someone's that much bigger than someone? At some point, you got to be like, okay, so they're just getting bullied out there. And not saying that Ole Miss was getting bullied out there, because if you watch the first half, Ole Miss had more than enough capabilities to hang around with this UCLA team. It's just in that second half, the depth of that UCLA team, the talent of that UCLA team allowed them to pull away a lot. They shut down Maddie Scott, only 4 points for her. And then, like I mentioned, Betts had 31 points, 10 rebounds. She went 15 for 16 from the field, Zach. And when I was talking with Evie after the game about that, she said that when she was doing a little bit of research trying to find when the last time someone was that efficient in a March Madness game, the last thing that she could bring up where someone only missed a shot or 2 shots, Bill Walton. Bill Walton. was the last guy to have that efficient of a night on that many shots in the paint, on just no three-pointers, not many free throws. Lauren
Yeah.
Best was just getting buckets in the middle of the paint for UCLA in that game. And the big question for me is Ole Miss ever going to be able to reach that status of, South Carolina, UConn, USC, LSU? Are they going to be able to reach that elite level status? Because in being able to beat a UCLA team, you're going to have to be an elite team like UConn, like South Carolina. And from what I see on the outside looking in, it seems like Coach Yo has a lot of those capabilities to be one of those elite level coaches. Can she put a team together to be able to bring and this Ole Miss program past the Sweet 16? Because she's been there twice already. If you can get to the Elite Eight, that's when you know that you become an elite program, I feel like, Zach.
And that's the question for me, Cam. It feels like a lot of these games against top-ranked opponents, we're sitting here on the podcast talking about, oh, if they had done this a little better, they would have won that game. And you look at all those 11 losses, again, really quality opponents. So for me, it's answering that question by not only competing, your tail off in the regular season and taking down some of those big-time names like you did against LSU at the end of the year, but carrying that into March as well. And you just talked about it briefly, but the Elite Eight, the Final Four, that's where you're going to find your big dogs, your big contenders on a yearly basis. And if Coach Yo can move Ole Miss into that position further and further as the years go by, I think there's no question she's already a great coach, but this is keeping her from becoming arguably a top 5 coach in the country, which is completely possible. But again, the proof is in the pudding. That starts in the regular season. So when you have those opportunities against your South Carolinas, LSU's, USC's really early on, I think that was the first game of the year, you need to take advantage of it just a little bit more to give yourself maybe a higher seed than the 5 seed, maybe host a playoff game, things along those lines. But there's no question that big things are coming, especially like we talked about. The season just ended, which is sad, but boom, 3 commits today. We're already looking past the next season. So, Coach Yo will get there, I believe. But it starts right now in the portal and recruiting players to be able to get there.
Yep, exactly. It starts right now in the portal, recruiting 3 players right off the bat. That's showing signs of building towards an elite program. And like I said earlier, you added 3 really good players to this roster. We spoke about him briefly, but Lattimore from Virginia, she was a top 40 recruit coming out of high school. She committed to Texas, spent 2 years at Miami. Didn't really play too much in her first 3 years. Really broke out last year at Virginia with her 14-8. I'm going to bring a physical presence in the paint with Iwala, who's was a pretty good offensive presence that time this year. She showed some fatigue on the defensive end late in games, I feel like, throughout the course of the season. But if you can get someone like Lattimore beside her, get that pressure off Iwala a little bit. I mean, Lattimore's 6'4". That's another big body in the paint for Ole Miss. And I think that adds a little bit just extra size down there low for Ole Miss. But Caitlin Peterson also, I mean, looking at her stats, they speak for herself. She was the 20th night to accumulate 1,000 points over her career. She did that in 2 seasons. Became the 20th player to do that. She came 5th on the all-time scoring list in just 2 seasons at UCF. She put down 118 three-pointers. Ole Miss is in desperate need of shooters on the women's side of things. I mean, KK Deans is gone. Tamia Sadler is gone. Kenny Ty Williams. I'm not sure. I think she will be gone. I think she can become a graduate if she wants to, but I think she's probably going to go pro and leave the program. But Kenny Ty Williams, I know not the greatest shooter, but she was able to deliver threes at times for Ole Miss. Bringing in someone who can hit, 60, 70 threes a season. I mean, that's what you've been looking for Coach Yo in these past couple of seasons. Not really a big-time three-point shooting team, a low-scoring team at times where you're scoring 68, 70 points a game. If you can get someone that's shooting 4 or 5 threes a game and making a good half of them, I mean, that's adding to your point total. That's making you on the level of these UConn, LSU, South Carolina teams. And I think adding these 3 players is just, like I said, only a step in the right direction for Coach Yo. And like I said, Team 51 now, I guess we're not referring to Team 50 anymore. So Team 51 after a great long season of Team 50, one to remember for sure. But I think that's all we got for the women's side of things today. We'll hop right into the men's side of things, men's basketball side of things. And we'll start off just with the Sweet 16 loss, Zach, against Michigan State, 73-70. Obviously, that last 3 from Matt Morrell to cover the spread at the end there. If you're a sports bettor and you've seen that 3 fall and you took Ole Miss 3.5, you would love to see that 3 fall from Matt Morrell at the end of the game there. But if you're a Rebel fan, obviously, the 3 really didn't matter that much. Just your overall thoughts on that game, Zach. It seemed like, I mean, you don't want to complain too much, but it seemed like the refs kind of, some iffy calls down the stretch there that maybe would have decided the game in points. But this is definitely a game that Ole Miss let slip through their fingers.
I'll start with this, Cam. Good teams win, great teams cover. So shout out to Ole Miss. Really benefited some of those bettors. No, but again, I was in New Orleans for the weekend watching the game. It was difficult, kind of a hectic environment, but really, I could be more proud to watch that team for that entire game, man. I don't say this with disrespect, but if you want to take yourself a look at some of the NBA draft boards and things along those lines, Michigan State has on paper, a lot more talent than Ole Miss. And in that first half, not only was Ole Miss winning, but I mean, they were locking Michigan State down like to a T. They had nowhere to go. They were missing all their shots. It was elite level defense. And I had confidence that Ole Miss was able to win that game. But I think a lot of those March Madness games are decided in the final 5 minutes of play. And that's when Michigan State really turned it on. And it looked like they couldn't miss a damn shot. So, as unfortunate as it is, I did think there were some interesting calls. I thought there was a potentially missed goaltend call for Michigan State down the stretch as well. But credit to them. And just to show you guys how fast March Madness goes, 2 days later, they're done as well. They're already back in East Lansing. It's over. So as much as it stung, I do think it would have been a difficult matchup against Auburn. Not that we would have lost that, but I think for the sake of the fan base, I'd probably rather lose to Michigan State rather than Auburn for the fourth damn time in a season. But similar, like I said, Cam, weirdly enough, we're already focusing on recruits and how to establish this team for next year. So we'll get into that briefly. But I mean, I want to get your take as well. What kind of went wrong in that game, Cam, and how satisfied do you feel as a fan, but also a reporter after this year?
Absolutely. And I was not trying to take anything away from Super Talk, but I was listening to Super Talk earlier today, and I was listening to their points on the game. And I really liked their points on the game. Ole Miss had to do a couple of things to win the game or have a chance to win the game against Michigan State. And that was Michigan State being the best rebounding team in the country. Ole Miss struggled in rebounding pretty much the entire season until it got to about playoff time, and we saw them struggle a little bit in the SEC tournament with rebounding. But pretty much until playoff time, Ole Miss had struggled on the boards pretty much the entire season. You didn't need to do that in the Michigan State game if you wanted a chance. Ole Miss out-rebounded Michigan State. What Ole Miss doesn't do, they don't turn the ball over. They didn't turn the ball over much. They turned it over about 9 times a game. They turned it over 8 times against Michigan State. They needed to create a lot of turnovers. I think they stole the ball 8 times against
Yeah.
Michigan State. Michigan State only stole the ball 1 time from them. Ole Miss did everything they really needed to do to stay in this game, and it showed on the scoreboard. One thing Ole Miss didn't do that they did throughout the entirety of the playoffs was hit threes. Ole Miss didn't hit a lot of threes in this game. I think they shot about 33% from the field. They shot nearly 50% throughout the rest of pretty much SEC play, the end of SEC play, and then going into the tournament. Ole Miss was lights out from three. Padula was hitting a lot of threes down the stretch. Matt Morrell was hitting big threes down the stretch. Matt Morrell hit some pretty big threes in that game against Iowa State to kind of pull that game away against Iowa State. But the threes just weren't really falling for Ole Miss in this game. I mean, Padula did have 24 points in his final game as a Rebel, but not really a lot of scoring outside of Padula. I think it was Dia and Morrell combined for another 24 for Ole Miss. But Michigan State had 4 double-digit scores in this game. It seemed like Jason Richardson's son, just couldn't miss in that second half for Michigan State. I mean, he had 20 and 6, and he was just shooting the lights out down the stretch there for them. But like I said earlier, it just seemed like you couldn't hit the big three, and down the stretch, the game started to slip away from you a little bit. Things started getting emotional. You see Tom Izzo hitting the floor, telling his team to guard up, and maybe the moment was a little too big for a team that hadn't been there and hadn't had much experience in the tournament. And that's okay, because I mean this is a program that hadn't been in that spot in 24 years, and a coach who's in the second year in the program, and he got you there. So I think, if anything, if you're an Ole Miss fan, no one was really mad about that loss. I mean, yeah, at the end of the game, it's kind of heartbreaking. You kind of had to let it settle in a little bit, but you're not necessarily mad about it when you look back on it and you're like, okay, this team made the Sweet 16 for the first time in over 2 decades. So it's only going to build up from here, and that brings me into my next question: Can Chris Beard keep up this consistency in Oxford, having to rebuild a roster every year, Zach?
Yeah, I want to get into this. It's a good question. And, right now, if you're looking at the roster, there's so many departures. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, that's what happens when these guys are running on 1 year of eligibility. especially a lot of those transfer guys, Davon Barnes, Dre Davis. Fortunately, Dia has another year, but Ole Miss can still make a starting lineup through the freshmen that have signed. So for me, right now, it looks like Klafke at the point, Patton Pinkins at shooting guard, Tyler Jordan at the 3, Malik Dia at the 4, and John Bull at the 5. Now, Klafke, Dia, John Bull, they could transfer during this recording. They could transfer tomorrow. They could transfer in 2 weeks if they wanted to. I don't know if they're set in stone. Like, it's a crazy day and age, and they're all probably going to get thrown a good amount of money to go and take their talent somewhere else. But right now, on March 31st, Ole Miss has a legit starting 5 without any portal players. So now you take into effect the 4 or 5 guys who are going to come here and probably play over 30 minutes a game. In my opinion, this is already a roster that is much more deep and talented than last year's team. I mean, if you told me that last year's roster was going to make it to a Sweet 16 with a hurt Matt Morrell the whole year, I'd probably tell you you're crazy. So on paper, I think they match up. They have a lot more size, which was a problem the entire year. But I think a lot of these freshmen are going to start to develop. Tyler Jordan and Patton Pinkins are 2 of the best freshmen to ever come into this program. And guys like Klafke and Dia and Bolt, granted they stay, should take those steps to become even better, more talented, gain more confidence, and get more of a veteran presence on this team. I mean, without even counting the transfer guys, I give you 5 players who could start on the SEC floor right now. So for my head, Chris Beard's got this unit in a pretty good spot. And I don't think there's any question that you're looking at another team who can make it to the second and maybe even the third weekend with a roster full of talent and guys with more height. You saw what Chris Beard did with this year's team. The sky's the limit for the program, and especially next year when, some of those guys, the older guys, get flushed out. We get some new talent, some new energy in the building as well. So I'm very just optimistic, Cam. But the portal is open. There's a couple guys who we're getting a lot of buzz around, a couple guys visiting as well. And I want to just dive into that, Cam. Who are some players on your radar? And where do you think Ole Miss needs to make some additions before next winter?
Well, absolutely, and I'll start off with the additions so far. Like Zach said, you got a pretty a group of 5 that are at Ole Miss right now. Obviously, don't know what's going to happen with Malik Dia. He could test the waters in the NBA draft. He could come back. He could transfer out. I would like to think Eduardo Klafke stays. I still don't really know what to think about John Ball. Is the development there? We don't know really yet. I would think Eduardo Klafke and John Ball stay, though. But right off the top of my head, you want to go get some size if you're Ole Miss. And not because that was what you lacked this year, because it is what you lacked this year. I mean, you did have Malik Dia, 6'9", 240 in the paint, but that's all you had. And Malik Dia is not a true center. Everyone knows that. Malik Dia is not a true center. He's a power forward. He likes to shoot it. He doesn't play a ton of defense. But if you're Chris Beard, you don't. If you look at Chris Beard's past teams, a lot of 6'7", 6'8" guys just spread across the floor. So it's kind of out of his I guess resume to go get the big 7-footers and the big 6'10" forces like Janiah Broome in the paint. But I think that's what you got to do if you're Chris Beard. You got to go and get at least one of those guys if you're Chris Beard. And it's gonna have to be a guy that you're anchoring your defense afterwards. You're having this guy in the paint blocking, protecting the rim, kind of like you hope Jamarian Sharp and Musa Cisse would have been in year 1 for Chris Beard. But we know how that turned out. But that's what you're looking for. I feel like obviously you need to go find the guard play, and that brings me to Pop Isaacs. Pop Isaac, Creighton guard, started his career at Louisville, I believe. Is that correct?
He may have started at Tech.
Tech, yeah, it was Tech. It was Tech. It was 2 years at Tech and then Creighton before that. So that's kind of the connection there with Beard. Obviously, didn't recruit him, but the Tech connection there. Chris Beard coaching at Tech and bringing them to a Final Four championship appearance. But Pop Isaacs, from what I see on tape, one of the best 3-point shooters in the country when he's healthy. Shoots the lights out. Really good size for a playmaker at 6'5". No official word there yet, but a lot of traction gained on social media right now between that name and Ole Miss. And if you're Chris Beard, if you're the Ole Miss program, that's a name that you want to lock down early because I mean a lot of people are going to be going after Isaacs. And if you had the opportunity to go steal an elite shooter out of the portal like you did last year with Sean Padula And we talked about it before the pod, Zach. Sean Padula's numbers really increased this year with Ole Miss, especially the shooting numbers. Pop Isaacs already shoots the lights out, so you can imagine what happens here if he's able to come here and play a full season under Chris Beard.
And Isaacs, first off, it does frustrate me that his last name isn't just Isaac. It's hard to say. That's my
Isaacs,
only
yeah.
that's my only critique of him.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, this would be such a big pickup because these bigger programs are going to start throwing a lot of money the longer he stays around. So let's get that pen to paper, lock it down. Walker Jones made a tweet that made it seem like it was finalized with the Grove Collective, but Isaacs hasn't posted anything. There's no sort of documentation yet. We're just kind of hoping that it plays itself out. But yeah, at Texas Tech, he was coached by Mark Adams and Al Pinkins, who are both on the Ole Miss staff right now. So the relationship's clearly there. Again, we've talked about it. It's up to the collective right now to finalize it. But I would say there's probably a 95% chance that Isaacs announces by the end of this week to Ole Miss. So very exciting. And then you talk about size. First things foremost, Pop Isaacs is 6'2". He would have been the tallest point guard on this team, taller than Juju and Sean Padula. So already a good step in the right direction. And then Carter Welling, the 6'10 center from Utah Valley. He's also visiting Ole Miss. He's one of these players. You see the graphics where it looks like every school in the country has reached out to them. Unfortunately, he's a guy who wanted to come to Ole Miss. So if you can get a true center, a guy who's a kind of an elite defender, Welling can shoot too. These are the guys we've been talking about, these versatile pieces who can play all over the floor for Chris Beard. I think it'd be super beneficial and it'd make an immediate impact from the second these guys step off the bus, right? Ole Miss played a lot of small ball this year between, Jamin Brakefield, Malik Dia playing at the center. To have that true five would really benefit the offense as well as rebounding, block shots, things along those lines. So exciting news to come. I will say the sheer volume of portal entries is insane, like absolutely insane. Yeah. There's no way that Beard doesn't get 4 or 5 guys who are going to be damn good SEC players because there's so many of them. You're almost like picking a name out of a hat here, and it's going to work out. So Beard's going to get his guys. Let's have confidence with that. Both programs, men's and women's, are rolling high right now. But definitely, to start things off, I think Isaacs would be an awesome addition. He's a guy who has connections to former Creighton, former Tech players, and also a veteran to play for this program. So very, very exciting. And also 2 years of eligibility. How's that sound, Cam?
Absolutely. And like adding to what you said, Zach, just that size really plays a difference, especially if you're a versatile big and you're able to space the floor a little bit. We saw how that benefits Tennessee, Florida. I mean, even another team that was in the play-ins of the tournament, San Diego State, with 2 bigs that spaced the floor really well. If Ole Miss can even just get 1 big that spaces the floor really well, like I said, Malik Dia was a big, not a traditional big though. You want a big that's traditional in the paint all the time and ability to get out to the corner or stop at the top of the key and pop a 3 when he can. And I think Welling can be that, just like Zach said. I think that's all we got for the basketball side of things, guys. Be sure to keep up with the rebelwalk.com. We're putting out articles and post on tweets, post on social media all the time, just about commitments, traction, whatever it is. TJ Oxley does a really good job on social media of just getting stuff out. Just make sure to bump this, keep an eye on this guy. He tries to keep us in the loop with all that stuff, but it's so crazy. TJ's really just immersed in all that stuff. So be able to make sure to go over to TJ's social medias and just look what he's got on there. Keep up with all the Ole Miss portal tracker stuff, and just keep up with all that. So like Zach said, there's so many entries going in right now. And the fact that Chris Beard, I mean, I know there's not a lot of players that could enter the portal for Ole Miss, but the fact that Chris Beard and this Ole Miss program don't have a portal entry yet, that's good signs to come. It seems like you're going to bring at least most of those players back, if not all of them. So big things to come for Ole Miss women's basketball, big things to come for Ole Miss men's basketball. Make sure to keep up with all that portal news, and we'll get back to you guys in the next pod. If there's anything, like Zach said, maybe Isaacs commits by the end of the week, maybe Willen decides to come to Ole Miss, we'll definitely keep you guys updated with the next pod and throughout the week with articles and stuff like that. Moving into the baseball side of things, interesting weekend for Ole Miss. You had the series that starts on Thursday, ends on Friday, and you still played 3 games because you played a doubleheader on Friday. some weather issues there that stopped them from playing a game on Saturday. Rained all day Saturday here in Oxford. Ole Miss takes the series 2-1 against Florida. Very emotional doubleheader on that in that doubleheader game, especially in the first game of the doubleheader, and then leading into that back game of the doubleheader. This was a SEC winless team in Florida that was desperately wanting to get that first win, and they finally got it in that last game, avoiding the sweep of Ole Miss. Just your overall thoughts on the weekend, Zach, just the pitching, we can start off with the pitching first. Just your overall thoughts, just the pitching for Ole Miss this weekend.
Before we even go there, Cam, I want to start with the Florida offenses and their pitching as well. The team is very talented. They have an elite coaching staff. You turn on the College World Series, it's more than likely that Florida's going to be there almost every year, with the exception of maybe 2025. But pitching staff, I really can't – I don't know what to make of it. I think a lot of the problems are being covered by how potent the offense is, but there's no question that the relief pitchers are wildly inconsistent, and it's going to be a problem down the road, especially in highly competitive games like you saw on Saturday or Friday. Dude, what's going on? Sorry. On Friday when they played this doubleheader. And did they wear their powder blues that second game?
I think they did. Yeah, they changed out uniforms in the games. Yeah,
my head's spinning trying to get around that idea. But the first game they ended up winning. Highly scoring game again. Like we see, it seems to be a trend in the SEC here. And then the second game, the bullpen kind of fell apart a little bit. And Will McCausland's a guy who's been there at times in high leverage situations, and in other times he hasn't shown up and he struggled. And that was the version we unfortunately saw this weekend. It's not a diss to him, but there's some inconsistency with Joe Mangum's bullpen, and also some good things from the starters as well. I don't want to discount all of that. But against Kentucky here, it looks like we're going to get a very similar type matchup. It's going to be a lot of offensive power going on. I'm curious to ask you, Cam, do you think that Riley Maddox is going to maintain that Saturday spot? I think it's another Thursday series.
Yeah, it's another Thursday, so I guess it'd be the Friday spot this coming up weekend. But the game 2 spot, yeah. Off the top of my head right here, Walker Hooks and Mason Morris, I think are the better options for that game 2 slot. Nothing against Riley Maddox. Not saying that he's not capable of being a starter in the SEC, but it doesn't seem to be going Riley Maddox's way this year. It seems like at times last year when Ole Miss was not a good team, Maddox could go deeper into games. Maddox could go, 5th, 6th inning and make those games competitive where Ole Miss at least had a chance, but the bats just wasn't there for Ole Miss a year ago. Now the bats are here, and you got the Ole Miss bats carrying some of the pitching to wins at times. And you have Maddox on the game 2. This past weekend goes 1.1 inning, gives up 4 runs, gets put out pretty early. And that's happened the past couple of weekends with Maddox. And like I said, not saying that Maddox can't be a starter, but it's a consistency thing that if it keeps happening, you have to go another way. And I know Bianco, the way that he is, you win a series, you don't really change up the pitching rotation. But I think at some point, if you're Mike Bianco, you have to look and be like, hey, we did just play a Florida team that's not the same Florida team that they have been. Before that, we played the worst team in the SEC in Missouri, and we snuck away with wins even though our pitching wasn't that great from the starting spots. I mean, outside of Hunter Elliott, who continuously keeps going 5 innings, nothing crazy. I mean, did strike out 7 with no walks this past weekend, only gave up 3-1 home run, went 5 innings in that one. But it seems like outside of Hunter Elliott, you don't really have just a lights-out guy. I think Walker Hooks can be kind of a lights-out guy if the development's there. I mean, we've seen what he's able to do in the middle innings with 3 innings here, 3 innings there. He gets 6, 7 strikeouts a game just in those relief innings. And then Mason Morris, obviously, too. The issue is with Mason Morris is he's so good after Hunter Elliott that if Hunter Elliott goes 5, 6 innings, Mason Morris can finish the game. And do you want to move away from that and put Mason Morris in the starting role and hope that Maddox can be that guy behind Hunter Elliott? Or do you want to throw a freshman in Walker Hooks out there who's probably going to be starting for your program within the next couple of years and see how it goes? And I think that's probably where I lean towards. You probably go Walker Hooks on the game 2s from now on. You throw Maddox behind Hooks out of the bullpen, or throw Maddox behind Nichols out of the bullpen in Game 3. Nothing against Maddox, like I said, he's had a long journey here at Ole Miss from Tommy John surgery. Really good breaking balls, really good sinker ball. We know what he's able to produce when he's on. But right now, it seems like Walker Hooks has that hot hand, and I think that's who you go to in Game 2 if I'm Mike Bianco.
Especially in, I mentioned it, but you got to look at the opponent you're playing. Now you got Kentucky, you're going to Lexington. I'll never forget last year when they just brought the belt and just demolished Ole Miss here in Oxford. It was
a really good Kentucky team that made it the College World Series last year too. Not the same team this year for sure.
No, Kentucky was just electric last year. But I think they're reverting to their real form, which, no disrespect, but Kentucky baseball isn't Ole Miss baseball. It's not LSU baseball, Mississippi State, whatever program you want to name. Look, these boys can still hit, Cam. And, you look at these games they've played, they've scored 10-plus runs in almost half their SEC games against a very good Georgia team, a ranked Auburn team, Texas A&M, who's supposed to be the best team in the country, but, they're really struggling right now. We get that. But Kentucky's proven, look, we can go on the road. We can do it at home. They're going to bring their bats with them. It's in this bullpen, in this starting rotation that they're really struggling. It's almost – I'm not going to compare the situation to Ole Miss. I think it's a little bit worse than the situation Ole Miss is in. But point being, they're struggling. There were 2 SEC games where they've allowed 5 or less runs. So if you're an Ole Miss hitter, you're licking your chops. If you're slumping right now, if you're a guy like Hayden Federico who's looking to have a bust-out game like he did earlier in the season, this is the weekend to do it, man. And you got to not only bring the bats, but show that, hey, despite Kentucky being a good hitting team, we need to get this pitching situation under control a little bit and limit their run production, because the next week, Tennessee's coming to town with Liam Doyle and Andrew Fisher, and you got to be ready to go. You need to have your staff lined up in the correct spots. So if you want to keep Maddox on Saturday, you keep him on Saturday. If you want to switch him, you switch him. But this seems like a weekend where some crucial season-altering decisions are going to be made, and hopefully we find out if it's for the better or not. But I'm excited. It's another opportunity for Ole Miss to not only win the series, but go 3-0, get some real momentum going into Tennessee. But just for you, Cam, what are you looking for? And maybe more specifically, some players who kind of need to have a good weekend for their personal season.
Absolutely. And I think the big thing for me this weekend is I had this highlighted here. Can the bats continue to carry this Ole Miss team? And that's how it's been pretty much throughout the entirety of SEC play. You've had you got your 6-3 in SEC play, and 2 of your 3 losses, you had a lead in the 9th inning that you gave up on the mound.
Right.
You had guys. I can't recall how that Arkansas game, just off the top of my head, how they took the lead into that late innings in that Arkansas game. But in that Florida game, you battle back to try to get the sweep, and Will Furnace hits a bomb to give you the lead, and then you give it up after that. Will Furnace and guys like that, at Braden Randall, those are the guys that I'm looking at right now for this Ole Miss offense. It seems like that lineup is kind of set in stone right now for Ole Miss. Other than maybe that shortstop spot, I mean, Luke Chang, kind of injury prone, it seems like. Great player in the field. It seems like the bat's a little bit better than we thought it was going to be for Luke Chang going into SEC play. But it just seems like the injury just is looking for him. The ball is looking to hit him. Players are looking to run into him. I mean, what was it, like first inning in the Florida series? Him and Mitchell Sanford collide, diving for a ball in the outfield. Mitchell Sanford comes out of the game. Luke Chang stays in. Randall comes into the game for Mitchell Sanford. Sanford comes back into the game, and Randall comes in for Chang. So I don't know what all happened there, but Randall had a really good weekend. He went 5 for 10 at the plate. Seemed to really come along this weekend as far as the bat. I mean, Bianco said it. I mean, this is a guy that played a lot of SEC ball last year, and it's starting to translate, I guess, now. I mean, it seems like every ball that Randall was squaring up this weekend, hard hit ball to the fence. And I mean, if this guy weighs a little bit more, if he's a little bit bigger, no telling what Randall's doing out there at the plate. But he's looked good. Maybe shortstop isn't the home for Randall. but he's definitely a really good fielder. He's one of the players that Ole Miss that like me and Zach like to say has grit. They get down and get dirty, and he'll go dive at a baseball. That's what Braden Randall does. And I think if you're Ole Miss, you're riding the coattails at the bottom of your lineup right now because you know the top half of your lineup is going to produce at this point. Mitchell Sanford looks just as good as you wanted him to be, if not better. Luke Hill's an MLB prospect. Judd Udemark, despite the strikeout rate, is batting .311 right now. Same with Ryan Mormon, despite the strikeout rate, he's batting .300 right now. Isaac Humphrey, a little bit down after that crazy weekend in Missouri, but you know what Isaac Humphrey is made of. You know what the top half of your lineup is made of. Like Zach said, Federico's slumping a little bit. You hope he breaks out of that this weekend with the bad pitching, bad bullpen pitching from Kentucky. But I think if you're Ole Miss, getting the bottom of that lineup to just keep doing what they're doing as far as Furness, Foley, Randall, Chang, whoever it is at the bottom of that lineup, if they can keep doing what they're doing, this Ole Miss team's going to be all right. As long as you have that guy on Friday with Hunter Elliott and you can figure out the rotation after that, the bullpen is going to be a question all year. That's no doubt about it. The bullpen is going to be a question all year for this Ole Miss team, and it's probably going to be the reason they get eliminated later in the year. Knock on wood, but that might be the reason they get eliminated in playoff contention later in the season. I mean, Connor Spencer's not even playing right now. I think he's got some little shoulder tightness right now, so no telling when he'll be back. You don't have your closer. You thought Braden Jones was going to be that type of closer for you, but he hasn't really showed that type of development other than the crazy fastball that he throws across the plate. But if you're Ole Miss, you're just hoping, like I said, that these bats can continue to carry you into the weekend. And that brings me into some of these guys for Kentucky that Zach mentioned. They're going to bring out a mix of starters. I'm not sure how exactly they're going to do this. It seems like I try to do this every week where I predict their starters, predict who they're going to throw out. But other than Mike Bianco, all these other guys, all these other coaches seem to switch up the rotations a little bit, unless you've got an elite guy out there. But it seems like for Kentucky, they're going to throw out Nick McKay on Friday. If not Nick McKay, they had Scott Roos last week against Texas A&M, who hadn't started a game all year for him, but was really good out of the pen for him. And he moved into that Friday role, and I think McKay moved back to Saturday. Their best starter right now, Ben Cleaver, he's got a 2.5 ERA, high strikeout guy with 42 Ks. He doesn't walk a lot. He's got 13 walks. So they got some guys over there that are going to shove it on the mound for Kentucky. But like Zach said, once you get into that bullpen, and when I look at those Kentucky stats, obviously stats can be deceiving sometimes, but strike to walkout ratio, that's not deceiving. And the strike to walkout ratio for some of these Kentucky pitchers is not looking good. Like Zach said, if you're Federico or some of those guys in this Ole Miss lineup that have been just kind of down right now, you're licking your chops right now heading into the weekend, I think, Zach.
It's a chance to establish some momentum, personally for a lot of these guys. Maybe settle in some of these relievers. And I said it, but really answering the main questions that you have before the true test of the SEC comes to town in Tennessee, and knowing you still have to play Vanderbilt, going to South Carolina, going to State, which they're not good, but it's always a rivalry weekend. You're probably going to want to win those games. So establishing it now is going to benefit this team in the future. And it's a big weekend, man. Kentucky, I'm not sure we'll ever be forgiven of them beating us in football, but it's given me a reason not to enjoy them or like them. So hopefully we go there, take care of business, get 2, maybe 3, and then come back to town and handle the boys from Knoxville. But it'll be fun, Cam.
Absolutely. And like Zach said, hope you get 2 or 3 this weekend. It doesn't seem like you have room to drop series anymore in the SEC.
Yeah.
That was a thing in the past where it seemed like you could drop some series here and there. But as soon as you drop one, there's no telling what's going to happen after that. You could drop a couple more in a row after that. I mean, you've seen what happened to Florida early in this season. You're seeing what's happening to Mississippi State right now. Once you start losing, it's hard to get back on track. So if you're Ole Miss, you want to stay on track. You're 6-3 in the SEC, which surprisingly, like I said, you look back a couple of years ago, 6-3 in the SEC, you're probably top of the SEC. Ole Miss is sitting at number 7 right now because you got so many teams only with 1 loss in the SEC. But like I said, this is an Ole Miss team that could be a 1-loss SEC team right now, despite the pitching. The good thing is for Ole Miss baseball, just like Ole Miss men's basketball, you play a lot of close games so far, a lot of emotional baseball games that you came out on top of, and a lot of them. So if you're Ole Miss, you're using that as fuel. You're telling your team every day, hey, guys, we've been in this situation. We've been down in games before, and we came back. So you have to keep riding those coattails of just having that fire behind you, because this is a fire that we've seen in this Ole Miss baseball team this year that we hadn't seen in the past 2 years. And I know it's felt like a long time since you've seen a really good baseball team at Ole Miss come out there, but it seems like Ole Miss baseball is on the top right now, on the way back up to the top right now. Moved up to number 9 in the rankings, 6 spots, the biggest mover in the D1 ranks this past week. You're right back in the spot that you thought this program was going to be in the past 2 seasons. I mean, coming into the season, you're picked second to last in the SEC. No one would have thought Ole Miss was number 9 in the country right now. You're proving a lot of people wrong. You got Jackson State on Tuesday. Nothing against Jackson State, but that should be a win for Ole Miss tomorrow night. We're recording this podcast on Monday, and then heading into the weekend facing the 17-9, 4-5 in the SEC team in Lexington and the Kentucky Wildcats. That'll be a Thursday series starting on April 3rd, ending on April 5th. I think that's all we got for you guys today. Is that all you got, Zach?
Yes, sir, man. Hopefully we get another series win.
That's all we got for you guys today. Make sure to keep up with all that stuff, like I said, on the portal tracker thing for Ole Miss basketball, men's and women's, and then keep up with baseball as well. Obviously, keep up with a little football. We'll try to get a football podcast for you guys out soon. Maybe have a few guests on from the football team. Maybe have a few guests on for baseball. We'll see what we can do for you guys and try to put some more stuff out in the middle of the week as far as podcasts for you guys. But I think that's all we got for you guys today. Just make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out the Rebel Walk on social media. Subscribe to me and Zach on social media. And with that being said, thanks for tuning in, and make sure to check out the rebelwalk.com for all of your Ole Miss sports needs.